Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Greetings from Geneva. Thank you everyone for joining us. I'm very happy that quite a large number of people are interested in this topic, which I believe is indeed very interesting and important. I'm Jonathan Gessendorfer. I work at the Statistical Division of the UN Economic Commission for Europe, and I'm here today in my role as the Secretariat of the UNEC Steering Group for Statistics on SDGs. And with me is Live Rugnerud from Statistics Norway, who co-organized this side event together with UNEC. And I would like to make a very brief introductory remark on why we believe this topic is very important. The 2030 Agenda from the very beginning foresaw that the global SDG indicator framework will be complemented with additional indicator framework on the regional and national level. And national indicator sets really are designed to measure the progress on the SDGs in a way that is particularly relevant for the national implementation. And in the region that I'm working in at UNECE, we have about 75% of all countries that do indeed have developed such a complementary national indicator framework. And this really highlights the importance of considering the specific context when we produce statistics for SDGs. The SDGs are implemented within countries, which is why the national indicator frameworks are important, but also, and this is very important to this webinar specifically, many decisions are taken on a subnational level. So for example, by decision makers in municipalities. And this means we also need sound statistics on this level to enable local governments and other stakeholders to make evidence-based decisions. And this is where this taxonomy that was developed by Norway can come in. It's a tool to classify and select indicators that are fit for a specific purpose. For example, to develop a national indicator framework or to select indicators relevant to specific municipalities. And this webinar will introduce this taxonomy and will present a few case studies and ideas on how to use it. Before I invite our first presenter, there are some housekeeping matters I want to go over. The agenda is very busy. We have a total of 6 presentations. And for this reason, we will open the floor for questions twice. Once after the 3rd presentation. So any questions or comments you may have up until this point can be addressed. And the 2nd time after the last presentation, then we should have more time and questions can be addressed to all 6 presenters. You may have already noticed that your microphone and your camera are turned off by default. But if you would like to make a comment or ask a question, you can raise your hand via the raise hand feature of Teams, or you can write your question in the chat. We will then give you permission to activate your camera and unmute your microphone. And after I give you the floor, please don't forget to actually unmute yourself. And if you want to, turn on your camera and ask your question or give your comment. Would also like to let you know that this meeting is recorded and we will make the recording available alongside with all the presentations after the meeting. The meeting is also transcribed in English, and this is the last point in the housekeeping matters. Please do not change the language of the transcription, and because if you change it for yourself, it will change the language, the transcribed language for the whole meeting as well. And with that out of the way, it's my pleasure to introduce our first presenter. Anne Romsas is the Chief Advisor in KS, the Norwegian Association of Local and Regional Authorities. Anne coordinates the association's work on the Sustainable Development Goals nationally and internationally, and works to strengthen the SDG localization and achievement in the Norwegian municipal sector. She also coordinates the KS work on demand-driven innovation and innovative procurement and smart city development. Anne, I hand over to you.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. As you so clearly stated, the 2030 Agenda commits national governments. SDG achievements, however, depends strongly on the efforts and the progress of the local and regional level. And that is why we in KS, as a local and regional government organization, have taken action to strengthen the municipal sector's ability to do their part in reaching the SDGs. Many municipalities and regions in Norway base their strategic planning efforts on the SDGs, both to ensure sustainable service provision and future-oriented local and regional development. But there is still work to be done so that all municipalities and regions take part in the effort to achieve the SDGs. Cross-sectoral collaboration, pooling resources, building alliances is necessary in order to reach the ambitions in the 2030 agenda. The local governments need to seek new solutions through collaboration and experimentation and seek partners across sectors and borders. And in order to do that, we need knowledge on the progress of achieving the SDGs, and we need data on where we are to identify the actions needed moving forward. The global effort to achieve the 2030 agenda is in constant need of better data and statistics. And there are multiple ways of measuring progress towards the SDGs, but which indicator to choose and how to measure might prove challenging for a local authority. The Norwegian classification model, known as the taxonomy, seeks to help. The taxonomy is all about helping users to choose indicators that would support them in measuring progress towards the SDGs, depending on their own context and priorities. The taxonomy presented here today is developed by Statistics Norway in collaboration with the municipal sector in Norway. The taxonomy is developed with the emphasis of developing a tool that is practical and helpful, and at the regional and local level. But our experiences so far is that the architecture and the model proves helpful also in other sectors. So we hope that this contribution in some small way will take us all one step further to better data and better lives. And I look forward to taking part of the following discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. And without further ado, I would like to introduce our second presenter. His name is Li-Chun Zhang. Li-Chun has a doctorate in statistics and nearly 30 years of experience. And during these years, Li-Chun has worked for Statistics Norway as a senior researcher. He's also a professor of social statistics at the University of Southampton in the UK, and has previously been professor of official statistics at the University of Oslo. Li-Chun has published over 70 peer-reviewed research articles on a wide range of topics within statistical methods. He's currently the editor-in-chief of the Journal of Official Statistics and has served as associate editor for other highly established journals such as Series A of the Journal of the Royal Statistical Society and the Harvard Data Science Review. And as one of its developers, Li-Chun will give us an overview of the taxonomy. Li-Chun, the floor is yours. You are muted.
Thank you for the introduction. So my job here is to give you a brief introduction to the taxonomy and before we move on to the other aspects. So it's called the Taxonomy for Indicators Related to the SDGs. Let me start with a disclaimer. The taxonomy we talk about is quite different, something different to what sometimes people briefly call the EU taxonomy. And because we've had questions like this, what is the EU also has a taxonomy? What is the difference? And starting from this side is maybe also okay to before we present the taxonomy itself. So this is information you can get from the EU's website. EU taxonomy is a classification system that helps companies and investors to identify environmentally sustainable economic activities to make sustainable investment decisions. So it is really for business and people want to invest in businesses. Here, as you see, there are different sectors. So, example, if you are wondering to put money in offshore oil business or maybe a battery factory, you can use this system to find out how the environment sustainability is characterized in terms of these activities. Whereas what we're going to talk about is a taxonomy for indicators related to sustainable development goals. This taxonomy is a classification system that can be used to classify and assess either a given indicator itself or a set of indicators by applying a common standard taxonomy to all the SDG indicators. This should hopefully clarify their use and usability, either each on its own or in comparison to each other. So in the title, taxonomy for indicators related to SDG, obviously there are three keywords here, which is in red color here. I don't need to talk about the SDGs here too, so let me first briefly talk about what we mean by indicators, and then we move on to taxonomy. So what do we mean by indicators? This is actually not a quite simple matter. There are many different definitions of indicators and meanings around. I give you two examples, both taken from the Wikipedia, which is easily accessible to everyone. The first is, for example, an economic indicator is a statistic about an economic activity. That's one definition of an economic indicator. Another definition, also taken from Wikipedia, environmental indicators are simple measures that tell us what is happening in the environment. Now you see that obviously both are trying to give definitions of indicators, one about environmental, one about economic, but you see that the definition is quite different, although you might think, are they really trying to say something quite different? So these are the issues which means that a clarification of what we mean by indicator is actually necessary before we go on. So for our taxonomy, we have proposed a definition, which is generally an indicator can be understood as a summary representation of a phenomenon or theme area based on data for specific time, place, and other characteristics, or based on data that with a specific time, place, other characters, one way or another. Whereas more specifically, a statistical indicator is a measurable variable, which is a quantitative summary based on numerical data. So you will see that we are trying to make a definition which is probably more aligned with this economic indicator is a statistic about an economic activity rather than the other. But some how would you say, a limitation or precision is needed. So to illustrate, what do we mean? I mean, statistical indicator broadly. So we're being quite flexible here. So this is what I've taken from the Norwegian National Broadcasting Company's website. There is a report which is here in Norwegian, but I translate for you. It's for the Norwegian nature disappearing or disappears bit for bit. So it's an article about this. And in this article, I've taken down two pictures. Okay. Now think about the definition of indicators as a summary representation of a phenomenon or theme area. You might say, ask, are either of these pictures an indicator? I know you are familiar with statistics, numerical indicators, but suppose this is it a, I think if you ask this question, I think it depending on the summary, how summary it is, that is the first question, right? Because in the left, the picture, what it shows is a wideness area, which is grazing place for reindeers, actually, in the north of Norway. Okay, only the place is used by native people there. Now there's windmills built into it. This is a picture which shows how the area looks like now. On the left, in the right-hand side, the picture is giving you the maps of Norway through over 100 years, where this kind of wideness area coverage is. So neither is a numerical, a statistical indicator per se, but you would say if, depending on your interest, if your interest is just the area which is depicted by the left-hand side, then I think this picture is also a quite good indicator. It's a relevant indicator. But if your interest is for the whole Norway, then maybe that picture itself is not enough. You need to go for the things to the right. Okay, but together, the left-hand picture also enhances your understanding of what's going on. Because what do you mean by wideness area? It actually, by definition, it is someplace at least 5 kilometers away from heavy technological installations. So you would see that the left-hand picture, all these areas, without these windmills, would be classified at wideness area. With these windmills, probably all gone. Now you have an understanding of this. Anyway, so here's just what we mean by indicators and statistical indicators. So therefore, in order to work with this range, wide range of possibilities, tools you can have, we must need some more systematic tools to help us. So the taxonomy, basically two sides of the thing. One is the classification category itself. The other side of the things, nomos, is the underlying logic and principle. I give you the example, the system of natural systems. This is the linear system, which divides plant, animal, minerals, everything, right? This is a very famous taxonomy, which exhibits both aspects, category, and the underlying principle. However, the key difference from the taxonomy we've been working on with these indicators for SDG is that the naming and the describing of the indicator itself is not the end of the story. Because if you think about the underlying logic of this system, linear system, it is the first basic function is actually like a collector's mentality, right? Do I have the right things? Am I missing something? If I find something new, can I place it in there? This is the basic function it serves, first of all. But when it comes to indicators related to SDG development, it's rather the indicators are tools to help you to work towards. Nobody is set out to collect these indicators per se. That is, I have a full collection of all the indicators. I'm not sure that makes you most happy, to put it this way. So therefore, in order to emphasize this use and usability of the indicator, this is the underlying logic is summarized as this conceptual model of the taxonomy, which is the most essential characteristics or properties relevant. So data is including the data owner, that's a factual basis for the indicators. In addition, we give every indicator 3 dimensions. Goal related to what it is about. So which SDG goals it is related to, or targets it may be related to. Perspective is about why an indicator may be of interest at all, or in what context you're using these indicators. Whereas the quality is really about how useful this indicator then is for this particular use and given the other 2 dimensions. So these 3 dimensions, each has its own typology centered on the use and usability. So here's a brief overview of the typology. So the perspective has 4 different types: strategic priority, development sector, evaluation, distribution. Goal has 2 sets of goals: the SDG goals itself, 17 goals and the sub-targets, and the triple bottom line. Whereas the quality has 3 classes, different indicators are classified into different classes. Each class has its own category. So just give you some example. For example, the strategic priority, this is defined to be a dynamic type, which means that the categories user can define themselves. So here's an example of 4 categories of the strategic priority: effective energy use, responsible finance, social cohesion, digitalization. Others can define in their context, and there are some more examples of this type of strategic priorities in the document, in the report. Another example is distribution. The distribution is this perspective is relevant whenever an indicator is not just one indicator, but you need multiple instances of indicator. So whether these indicators may be repeatedly calculated over time, or it is repeatedly calculated over space, or is it repeatedly calculated for different subpopulations? Whenever an indicator is multiple instances of the same indicator is needed, there is potentially a perspective to this distribution is related. In terms of quality, and a final example is like we defined it into 3 different classes because that's a place that's a little bit different to the other taxonomies in the literature. Class 1 is very heavily based on the official statistics quality framework. In terms of, for example, a indicator must be able to be assessed with respects to relevance, accuracy, timeliness, coherence and compatibility, availability, etc. These kind of clearly defined quality dimensions. Class 3 is something that is really not usable at all. It is unavailable either because lack of data, method, or measurable content, whereas class 2 is something in between. So the key point I want to emphasize is that it is really the interplay between these 3 dimensions. So when you work with indicators, what people often find is that you need to go some iterations between these 3 dimensions before you realize, distill forward to what are the indicators really interesting and useful for me. This work, this taxonomy helps you and reminds you to do this work, and it's this interplay that's really important, we believe, in the successful use of working with indicators, so that you become what we call a master of the indicators rather than the slave of them. So to summarize, this is the communication diagram, the taxonomy, where all the essential sort of features are summarized. There is a document available in English behind it, and these are the contents list of that indicator, that document. So I have just so far been giving you a very brief flavor of these things. I just want to close by emphasizing that the proposed taxonomy, because of this logical sort of structure, is applicable at any level of aggregation, whether it is international, national, regional, or local, although it was developed, motivated from the need of local government perspective. And the taxonomy hopefully is able to accommodate evolvement of user needs over time by possible adjustment of certain elements of the taxonomy without changing its basic structure, which is the 3 dimension and the interplay between them. Hopefully that will be a sustainable taxonomy going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Lichan. And for our final presentation, before the first round of discussion, we will hear from Luis Gonzalez Morales, the Chief of the Data Innovation Section of the UNSD, the United Nations Statistics Division. Luis is part of the team leading the development of a UN Data Commons platform and coordinates initiatives on data interoperability and integration of cross-domain statistical and geospatial information. He also coordinates the work of the Data Science Leaders Network and the collaboration with UN regional hubs for big data, focused on mainstreaming data innovation in official statistics. Since he joined the Statistics Division in 2005, Luis has worked in fields of economic statistics, data quality, development indicators, and the coordination of national statistical activities for the SDGs. He has a PhD in economics from the University of Bochum in Germany and a Master of Science in Statistics from the Monterrey Institute of Technology and Higher Studies in Mexico. Luis will introduce a second taxonomy for the SDGs. This taxonomy, as I understand, has a different purpose, but we believe it could potentially be used to complement the taxonomy established by Norway, and it's particularly interesting in semantic web applications. And with that, I give the floor to you, Luis.
Thank you, Jonathan, and thank you to the organizers for inviting me to join this webinar and for the opportunity to present about the UN SDG ontology or taxonomy that I think complements very well the efforts that were just presented by Statistics Norway with the general objective of enhancing the usability, findability, and interoperability of data for implementing the SDGs. So I will give a very brief overview of what this UNSDG taxonomy is about, and hopefully we have at the end an opportunity to continue reflecting on how these different artifacts can complement each other and build on each other. So this UNSDG taxonomy has been developed by the Statistics Division in collaboration with the partners from different organizations, the SDG division from DESA, the experts from the University of Rome at Tor Vergata, and it's now hosted by the UN The Hammarskjöld Library under their metadata initiatives, alongside the UN Bibliographic Information Service Thesaurus. So it starts to build a family of artifacts that can help us move our information resources into the semantic web, and also tap into many other resources like the SDG taxonomy that Statistics Norway just presented. So just to give you an idea of what this taxonomy is about, this is about providing unique identifiers to make our resources on the web findable, accessible, and searchable by means of unique resource identifiers, so that machines can know when two things are the same, even if they have different names, or two things are different, even if they have the same name. So this is a web-based mechanism to make SDG-related resources, data, and information accessible and interoperable and reusable. Similar to what for web pages we all know, like URLs. These are the URIs, which are unique global identifiers that enable the development of applications that integrate different data sources, different documents and information resources into analytic insights. So, for example, what this is at the core about is to provide a unique reference on the web available for anybody to know, for machines to know what we're talking about. So when we refer to something like goal 1, there is a unique identifier called metadata un.org/SDG/1, that it becomes a reference linked to other resources that different programs, software applications can traverse and find related resources. So what is in sort of a schematic way, what this is about is to make all this institutional knowledge that is available across the UN that has been systematized in the 2030 Agenda and other resources like SDG Indicator Framework, linkable to data and documents and resources that are also available on the web. And this happens through a set of artifacts that have been developed over the years. So starting, for instance, with the UN Bibliographic Information System, that taxonomy that allows to categorize documents that are managed by the library. When we connect this with other vocabularies and now with the UN SDG taxonomy, we are able to provide the semantic interlinkages for applications to start joining things that apparently belong in different domains, but are interrelated through deep connections of meaning. So this is where the magic of the linked open data and the semantic web starts to happen. So this SDG taxonomy is a very simple artifact. It's something that formalizes the SDG indicator framework. It's more or less related to one of the elements that is part of the taxonomy presented by Statistics Norway, the goal. Now, what is this about? So this is a way of formalizing or giving a specific name and indicator to the goals, to the targets, to the indicators, and to the statistical data series that are underlying the global indicator framework. So, and these are all linked to the terms of the bibliographic information system taxonomy, the library's vocabulary. And by doing so, we are able to say, give a meaning to goal 1 about poverty that is related to specific terms about poverty. And so machines can also traverse from goal to target to indicator to series, etc. So all these interrelationships are formalized and are machine readable and make it easier then to create sophisticated applications that provide insights by bringing different resources together. So, for instance, in the case of goal 1, it is linked to the official label of the name of the goal, also to the identifiers that refer to goal 1 in other vocabularies, and to different terms like poverty, like poverty mitigation, like from the UN library, from Eurovoc, etc. So in itself, this is not very this doesn't look very user friendly, but it provides the basic infrastructure then to build very interesting applications that make use of natural language processing capabilities, artificial intelligence algorithms, and so on, and are able then to combine different vocabularies and taxonomies into meaningful insights. So, for instance, just this is to conclude, this is an application that was developed by the Department of General Assembly and Conference Management. By using this SDG taxonomy that links the goals, targets, and indicators to specific terms in the thesaurus of the library, say it's to a dictionary of terms, it is possible to scan all the General Assembly resolutions, extract terms, and link them through automatic means with the relevant goals, targets, and indicators, and from there to the relevant statistical data series. So I would just like to conclude by first congratulating Statistics Norway for this effort, and hopefully also to insert in everybody's mind the idea that it is useful to move into the direction of formalizing these taxonomies in these artifacts in a machine readable way. So by creating unique identifiers in the form of URIs that then can be linked to core taxonomies like Eurovoc, like the thesaurus of the UN library, that allows to gain much more power from these individual efforts. So thank you very much for the invitation, and happy to respond to any questions at the end of the session. Thank you.
Thank you, Louis. And as promised, I can open up the floor for a first round of questions to Louis, Lichan, and Anne. You can either raise your hand or write your question in the chat. We'll wait for 1 minute before moving on. Okay, it seems that we have a question from Daniel. Let's wait 1 second until you have the permission to use your mic and camera. You should now be able to unmute yourself.
Thank you. Thank you. Just my question is actually for Louis, maybe also Statistics Norway. This is the GA resolution is another one application you're showcasing. Has there been any uptakes on other domains interested in linking up to this taxonomy's building application? If there are any initiatives going in the background, you can say a bit about it. Thank you.
Well, if I may just very quickly, of course, I am not fully knowledgeable of everything that's going on in the data ecosystem, no, but there are very important initiatives I am aware of that are promising. No, so there is work in the field of ocean data interoperability that is linking, that is developing unique identifiers, also linking their knowledge organization frameworks to other important schemes like schema.org is one of the taxonomies that are becoming sort of an industry standard, de facto industry standard, or schema.org. We ourselves in the Statistics division are working as also Daniel is part of this with in the context of UN data, bringing the statistical information from across the UN system to the semantic web. And in this, we make reference to unique identifiers externally developed by other organizations, stakeholders. And there is another SDG ontology. It's called SDG Interface Ontology, developed initially by UNEP, that also links back to our SDG ontology. And that those interlinkages are what enables ultimately third parties to develop applications that can traverse the semantic web. Yeah. So those are a few that I am aware of, and I'm sure there are many more.
Okay, thank you for the question, and thanks, Luis, for your response. I don't see any other questions. I think we have a question in the chat, but maybe a representative from Statistics Norway can answer that in writing. And
Yes.
Then I propose we continue with our second set of presentations. And our first presenter here is, I apologize in advance for mispronouncing your first name at least, is Geir Graf. Geir is an advisor in the fields of innovation and governance at the Center for Innovation and Learning in Asker municipality in Norway. And he also works part-time as a project manager for KS, that is the regional Norwegian Association of Local and Regional Authorities. And he's establishing and disseminating knowledge about the taxonomy for classification of SDG-related indicators. Geir will give an in-depth overview of the primary application of the taxonomy, the classification of SDG-related indicator sets, and how municipalities in Norway are using the taxonomy. And Geir, the floor is yours.
Thank you for the introduction, Jonathan. And I must say you pronounced my name quite perfectly, so thank you. It is an old Norwegian name, not too easy to say for people who are not familiar with the Norwegian language. But anyway, we will have a look into what we have been using this taxonomy to do since its first look at daylight in 2021. As Lichon has been telling us about, it's all about indicators. The indicators are in the center of what is being discussed here, and we are looking at indicators from different dimensions, from the perspective dimension, the quality dimension, and the goal dimension, to classify them. That means to sort them. That means to give them context. That means to give them metadata, to add metadata to them to show what they can be useful for ourselves as an organization, be that in the private, public, or voluntary sector. When indicators are classified, it's easier to choose to know which ones are the right ones for you to choose from your standpoint or your point of view. We will have a look at some concrete findings, because there is a jungle out there. There are lots of possible indicator sets, both relating to directly measuring the SDGs or SDG progress alongside the UN indicators. That is, of course, the master indicator set, so to speak. Other organizations like the OECD, like the EU Joint Research Center, or other global organizations or more local organizations have developed indicator sets to give meaningful insights into the work of sustainability worldwide. But what then if you are a municipality, if you are a private business, or you are an NGO looking into what indicator set is suitable for us, for the work that we do? Then it might not be as easy to enter this jungle and make the right choice. What we did was to start in our project with classification of SDG-related indicator sets that were familiar to many people and that also had a specific, sort of Norwegian context when it came to usage. We started with 6 indicator sets. That is the Norwegian suggested national indicators. That's approximately 500 of those. The U4SSC indicators that are familiar for people in the UN system. These have been utilized in a number of Norwegian municipalities as well as cities worldwide. We have looked into a project from the OECD. These are not the only indicators provided by the OECD, but there's a specific project that has worked with indicators measuring sustainability in regions worldwide. And one of these regions that was in the first pilot in that project was the Norwegian region. So we chose that one to see if that also had some value for other Norwegian regions. Of course, we added the UN SDG indicators and also the indicators from the EU Joint Research Center's handbook for voluntary local reviews, utilized by cities and regions mostly in Europe. It says 6 indicator sets up here, and the observance of you have seen me citing 5, but there are 2 versions of this JRC handbook, one from 2020 and one from 2022, with a little bit different indicator sets. So we have classified both of them, making it all in all 6 indicator sets. Just to sum up some of the findings for you. There are no surprises in the coverage among the 17 goals. Of course, we see that among these indicator sets, there are a number of indicators for each of the 17 goals. In these sets, you can see there is an overweight on goal 3 when it comes to well-being, and on goal 11 that goes to measure sustainability in local areas like cities and regions. So that there is no surprise there. And then it's neither a big surprise to see that most of the indicators, they are class 1. They have sound statistical quality across these sets here. There are, one might say, maybe some interesting ones here in the class 3, that there are indicators here that are classified as class 3. Maybe they are experimental, maybe they are trying to do something that's not quite finished yet, but maybe they have some interest if we just look into them later. We will not be doing that today, though. There is also something interesting here, that most of these sets that we classified, almost 75% of those indicators are only available on the national level. That, of course, makes them maybe less relevant to use for a city or a municipality, because you can only get numbers from the national level. So these findings, they didn't surprise us much. But we have some findings that across these sets surprised us a little bit. The first one was that we thought that there are probably most indicators when it comes to planet or environment. That has a bigger coverage than economic indicators or social indicators. But since this taxonomy makes it possible to say that this specific indicator might be relevant both for economic and social aspects, or both planetary, environmentally, and social aspects. That makes the social bit quite much bigger than we thought, actually. Then another thing that surprised us a little bit is when we used the evaluation classification, we saw that almost 75% of the indicators that we classified were output indicators. They measured output, sort of the easy things to measure. A small percentage only measured outcome or impact, that is effect-related indicators. So from our point of view, how can we measure sustainability if we don't focus on effect or impact or outcome, the things that happen after we have done things? It's not easy to measure, but to see that it was so much that only measured output and so little that measured effect, that was actually a quite interesting finding. We also saw that across the development areas that we have used here, there are some sectors, if you will, like digitalization and culture, that has very few indicators available. Some sectors like health and welfare, economy, the natural environment, these are areas that have a lot of indicators available, and that was no great surprise. But we also saw that some areas might need development of better indicators, or that we need to find indicator sets that cover those areas better than we have been able to so far. And to make this point, this job that we have done, we have classified some sets, we have made this taxonomy as a set of common glasses to look at them through. This doesn't say that one indicator set is better or worse than the other. It just says this one puts the emphasis here, the other ones put their emphasis there. And there is nothing right or wrong here. It just gives you a better map to navigate so that you know what you're looking for. Let's get more local then and have a look at the municipal level. We have been using the taxonomy to do three things mostly and together with the municipalities. So that is, of course, to give them access to the sorted indicators, the classified indicators, so that they can look through them and see what they could need as a municipality in the authoritative SDG sets. Then we have also taught them to use the taxonomy on their own governance indicators that they use in their day-to-day governance of the municipality or region. Because even though some indicators are not created to measure sustainability, they might still be useful to measure sustainability, depending on the type of indicator, of course. So we have taught municipalities to use the taxonomy to classify their own indicators and see what they find, see which metadata they can link to their own indicators, and then perhaps find a more balanced way of choosing the right governance indicators for them as a municipality. We have done that through something we call the Sustainability Pledge. That is a cooperation of large Norwegian organizations together with some municipalities. And we've also looked at 1,300 governance indicators from the 12 largest municipalities in Norway, started cooperating on classifying them. There we have actually also tested using AI to automatically classify according to certain dimensions of the taxonomy. We'll not go into details of that today, but if you're interested in the results, you can talk to us later. From the Sustainability Pledge, just one municipal example here, that the taxonomy helps us move towards more effect-oriented indicators in municipal governance, or at least gives us greater focus on indicator balance. That is a citation, a quote from one of the participants there. You have his contact information here if you'd like to talk to him later. He showed us that in their municipality, they had seen the same balance of indicators, that most indicators are output or activity related, not very many are effect oriented, and they would like to change that. Another municipality, the one that I work in my day-to-day job, is Asker municipality. We have been using the taxonomy there to strategically choose between indicators for our own governance, looking through the ones that have been classified, but also the ones we have in our governance structure. So among 300 possible indicators, our eminent analysts, they are, you see their names below here. You can contact them later if you'd like to talk to them. They are good people to talk to. They know much more about this than I do. But then they have they have used the taxonomy to choose 88 indicators out of those 300 and discard 180 to say that these ones, they are the best ones suited for our strategic prioritization. Here you can see the 8 goals of our municipal master plan, and they have then spread these 88 indicators out to see, do we have indicators measuring the most important goals for our municipality according to our assessment of the SDGs that we did in 2018. We did a materiality assessment then, and then they have seen that there is a good enough balance between indicators along these goals. They have also looked into the things that we have already mentioned. Most of the indicators they have classified are class 1. Most of them are, I think, Statistics Norway would be happy to see, from official statistics sources, not just things we have cooked up ourselves, but they are from official sources. And also we see the same findings that in our indicator set. There is also an overweight on social indicators because they are interrelated with both the economic one and the environmental one. Then other findings. What they have been doing very well is to look for effect indicators among these 300 possible candidates. So they have actually landed an indicator set for our municipality that, as you can see here, the impact and the outcome part are more than 50% of the chosen indicators. So they have used the taxonomy to actively find these. They have seen that they measure different update frequencies. Most of them are measured annually. That is good for municipal yearly budget planning. Others, they are measured every second, third, or 4 years, and that is better for other types of municipal planning. They have also found a gap here, as you see on the top right. There are few indicators for the elderly, that age group, and we would like to do something about that. So using the taxonomy has shown us this lack, and we can do something about it then, because we know that now, having used the taxonomy. Some other spin-offs that we have experienced in our work. We have, as Louis mentioned, we talked about you with this in 2021 too, Louis. There is an ontology developed in Trondheim municipality together with the Norwegian University of Science and Technology there that has focused mostly on the interrelation between the SDGs and synergies and trade-offs. So they have made an ontology there using the semantic web. We have also written a chapter in the SDG Voluntary Local Reviews Handbook from the EU Joint Research Centre in 2022. We wrote a chapter here about the taxonomy. And we have also looked at how can we use the taxonomy with other means of classification. We looked into the area of citizen science. So we wrote an essay about that, the URL here if you might be interested. And we have looked into how can we make this jungle of indicators into more of a zoo of indicators? We think that utilizing the taxonomy makes it easier to navigate. A jungle is a little bit scary. If you go in there, you don't exactly know which plant is safe to eat, which animal is safe to pet, because there are no, it's a little bit too much out there. But then in a zoo, it's a little bit safer. You have enclosures and you have signs outside that tells that this animal is safe to pet. This is okay. This is class 1. This is a safe thing to use. But in this cage here, in this enclosure here, you shouldn't pet these things. These are class 3. They are a little bit more rough around the edges. And this way of utilizing a taxonomy to gain insights has been the most relevant finding for us all in all. And we are continuing to classify indicator sets with the help of many others in Norway and abroad. If you are interested in classifying in your indicator set, please contact us and we will be able to assist you in starting that work. And as long as we continue doing that, the pool of classified indicators will become greater, and it will be easier for us to find the right indicators, whether we are a Norwegian municipality or a megacity somewhere else in the world, private corporation or NGO. We can all utilize the tool to gain the same insights, and also that will help us in the joint efforts of reaching the SDGs. Thank you.
Thank you, Geir. Great presentation. Our next presenter is Jørn Christian Undesfett. Jørn is a special advisor at Statistics Norway, where he has led the publication of global and national SDG indicators at the website of Statistics Norway. His expertise is within environmental statistics, geospatial statistics, as well as municipal to state reporting schemes, and he is heading the GIS expert team. Jørn has previous experience both as a teacher and as a planning and environment advisor at the municipal level in Norway. He holds a Master of Science in Management of Nature Resources and Environmental Protection. And Jørn will present a case study how Norway has used the taxonomy in the development of their national SDG indicator set. And with that, I give the floor to you, Jørn.
Thank you for the introduction, Jonathan. And hello to everyone who is sticking around until this part of the presentation. I will present Statistics Norway's experiences from using the taxonomy in a project aimed at establishing a national indicator framework for Norway as a supplement to the UN set of global indicators. The project has run over the past 2 years with funding from the coordinating ministry and is to be completed this semester. The reason why the taxonomy has come into actual use at Statistics Norway is the government report number 40 in 2021 submitted to the Storting, that's the parliament, proposing an action plan to achieve the sustainability goals by 2030. The action plan was adopted in 2022, and it summarizes the government's policy on the sustainability goals. The action plan also contains measures the government wants to implement and proposes a huge number of national indicators to monitor development in a Norwegian context. Statistics Norway was commissioned to be the driving force and facilitator in a collaboration with ministries and subordinate agencies to sort the proposed indicators using the taxonomy, limit the number of indicators to a manageable level, and publish the indicators on Statistics Norway's website. The number of indicators I talk about is like the 500 indicators that Geir mentioned earlier. For this, Statistics Norway created a template for metadata and a very basic template for documenting the results of the classification exercise. First, to look at the metadata template, Statistics Norway put up the following content elements, and we explicitly emphasized the need to get the authorities or the ministries and agencies explanation or justification as to why the proposed indicators have been chosen. We also asked for any definitions that are crucial for the understanding of the indicators. Taken together, this should give users insight into interpreting what is a desired and undesired direction of progress for a given indicator. Then I look at the template for the taxonomy exercise. In meetings with the ministries and agencies involved, Statistics Norway informed about the need to use the taxonomy as part of the documentation of the project, and explained how the classification exercise could be carried out using the poster, as shown here, and a simple form in Excel. Everyone involved in the project was also given a link to the published taxonomy documents. We can take a close-up look at the so-called form for the taxonomy exercise. It is designed for entering something for each typology under the taxonomy's dimensions. Quite simple form, I would say. When it comes to the use of the taxonomy by the ministries and the subordinate agencies in the project, our experiences are somewhat discouraging. The project received classification results only for national indicators proposed for Goal 5 in the action plan. And it's not easy to point at a specific reason why the classification of indicators was not carried out to the extent expected. Overall, it's probably a combination of limited resources, fear of doing something wrong, and the perception that the taxonomy is complicated. Perhaps the taxonomy was not explained thoroughly enough in the initial meetings of the indicator project and not reminded frequently enough during the project. Statistics Norway will, of course, keep on using the taxonomy and introduce it to everyone new to the SDG work here. So yes, I think that was my last slide. Yes, thank you for listening.
Thank you, Jørn. And our last presenter for today is Kara Williams. Kara is the Assistant Director of International Cooperation and the Sustainable Development Goals in Statistics Canada. Kara is co-chair of the United Nations Interagency and Expert Group for SDG Indicators, in short, the IAG SDGs. And she's also a member of the UNECE Steering Group on Statistics for SDGs. I would be remiss to mention that. And Kara has worked as the editor-in-chief of Canadian Social Trends and a senior researcher for Perspectives on Labor and Income. Those are two journals of Statistics Canada. And before her 27-year-long career at Statistics Canada, she worked for the government of British Columbia, where she conducted socioeconomic impact assessments of treaties under negotiation. Ms. Williams has a master's degree in economics from the University of Victoria. Kara will give an overview of other possible uses of the taxonomy. And with that, I hand over to you.
Thank you very much, Jonathan, and thank you to all the presenters today. It's very interesting presentations. So I want to thank the presenters for walking us through the taxonomy. As you heard, the taxonomy was developed for Norway to better assess the indicators at the local and regional level, but also remains useful at the national and global level. The global indicator framework for SDGs is enormous, 231 unique indicators, but this is a little bit misleading, as under many of the indicators, there are sub-indicators. And I don't know that there's an official count, but I think if we counted sub-indicators, it would be well above 400 indicators. Given this, a tool like the taxonomy is extremely relevant as it enables users to effectively assess the indicator for its usability. The dimensions of the taxonomy, as the presenters have laid out, are intuitive: goal, perspective, and quality. But these dimensions also enable the users to dig deeper, and I find that really interesting. Looking at the goal level and incorporating the triple bottom line accounting premise, you can assess the three dimensions of sustainability: economic, social, and environmental. And I think that maps well to the intersectionality and interlinkages spoken about in SDG discussions. And if users incorporate this lens into their assessment, it can be very useful. And as our presenters showed, there was a lot more on the people or the society aspect and a little bit less on the environmental and economic. The perspective dimension, or why the user would want to use it, is equally important in the taxonomy because it allows for the mapping of domestic, regional, local priorities. And here, the dimension that has the four components: strategic priority, development, and evaluation and distribution. And this is, to me, where the taxonomy could be a bit confusing for users, as it goes beyond the indicators and into policy action, and incorporates the notion of input, output, outcome, or effect models. And all of those subcomponents need to be overlaid against the other dimensions. So it could be a bit confusing. However, if you read the taxonomy report, there are examples that make it quite clear. The final dimension is the quality, and that was explained, so I won't go through it, but I think it also kind of maps to the tiering system that the interagency expert group had on it. So if you're not in tier, if you're not in 1 or 3, you're in 2, and that's the indicator that's been developed, but it still doesn't have sufficient maybe data. So it's the interplay of the dimensions that help the users identify if the indicator is fit for use. But to me, applying the taxonomy is interesting because the result of the assessment with the user perspective lens is really dependent upon who is doing the assessment. So for instance, users in one sector may find that after applying the taxonomy, a certain set of sub-indicators are applicable, but a different user applying the taxonomy could find a completely different set of subset of SDG indicators that are useful for them. So why should we care about indicators and indicator assessment tools? We do not measure simply for the sake of measurement. We measure because we want to ensure policy actions have the desired effect and that are working. We measure to understand the lived experiences of our population, and we measure because we want to improve things. So a couple of my thoughts. Overall, I'd say the taxonomy is a really useful tool. If I noted one drawback, it would be that it could be quite onerous to implement this, particularly because of the various subdimensions, which would require not only knowledge of data and statistics, but also because it requires of strategic and policy priorities across government. However, that doesn't mean it's not useful. It just means that an application of the taxonomy should be a collaborative effort with both policy and data specialists contributing to that. And I think it's been referenced by the other presenters, but while it was developed to help countries assess and organize SDG indicators, I think the value of the taxonomy goes far beyond the SDG framework and can be useful for any framework. It's one of its greatest strengths is it's flexible enough to be used to help countries, regions, municipalities, etc., make sense of the multitude of indicator frameworks that have been created or are in the process of being created. It can help them prioritize, assess, and subsequently populate indicators that are relevant to their priorities. It can also be useful in helping determine gaps, both data and statistical, also policy gaps, where to focus efforts. So I think that that's one of the great strengths of it, is that it does bring together policy and data. We are living in a world where data and statistics have never been more important, and not surprisingly, there have been enormous efforts made in developing measurement frameworks. And while the development of methodologies and frameworks is not easy, it is equally difficult to make sense of the intersection of these frameworks, where they overlap, where they diverge, and where they actually compete with each other. And as Geir noted, there's a jungle of indicators and indicator frameworks. So the taxonomy, to me, is something that could be applied more holistically in the data ecosystem and the indicator ecosystem to allow for better focus and targeted action for municipalities, for regions, for countries, and even industries. So with that, I will stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Kara. Thank you, everyone, for your wonderful presentations, and thanks as well for sticking to your allotted time. And with that, I can open up the floor for any questions. You can. Hi, I have a question from Monica. I will. You should be able to use your microphone and camera, Monica.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. I'm Monica from Statistics Poland. I have two questions for Geir. The first one is related to is about using the taxonomy by other municipalities than Norwegian municipalities. Is it possible to apply the taxonomy by municipalities from other countries? And the next question is about the flexibility of the taxonomy. Is it flexible enough to be applied not only by the public sector, but also perhaps by the private sector? Thank you.
I can answer both of those questions, I think, if that's okay with you, Jonathan.
Of course.
Yes, yes, it's absolutely possible to use in municipalities from other countries. The only part of the taxonomy that might be adjusted a little bit for other countries when it comes to that part is the development area, because we have used the Norwegian way of how services are distributed in Norway. So we name them according to the naming you see in the taxonomy. That might be a little bit different in Poland, but then you can just swap the ones from Norway with the ones from Poland, and you're there. So it's easy to swap things that are not global. Like the SDGs, they are global. The triple bottom line is global. The class or quality part is at least European when it comes to the ESS. So yes, it's possible to use there, but you might want to swap the development areas with the ones you might have in Poland that might differ a little bit. And yes, for the private sector, we have been discussing this with the private sector in several areas, actually also with the UNIDO, to see if this is possible to use when within the private sector. They have different indicator sets. They also have the EU regulations now through ESRS and these new regulations coming from this year. So it's absolutely possible to use there, but you might have to swap a class or two with the ones relevant for your sector, but the most of it concerning the goals and the other things, they are global, so they can be used by everyone, regardless of sector.
Thanks, Geir.
Thank you very much.
I have Louis next.
Thank you, Jonathan. I just have two questions for my colleagues, presenters. So first, for Geir, just to be sure I understand, the taxonomy is it available in machine readable way? So how did you ingest it into the models that you run in order to do the analysis? Or how is the technical implementation that allows to use things like artificial intelligence, natural language processing to connect your information with the taxonomy? So is it in machine readable way, and is it in multilingual, no, or are there plans to make it multilingual? And then, if I may, also a separate question for Cara, I would love to see the global SDG indicator framework also testing the taxonomy presented by Norway. And as you said, it would have to be a collaborative effort driven by the experts. No, so would you think it is feasible and desirable to run this kind of exercise, say, from the by the IHE SDGs? And by doing so, I think it would be possible now to link the SDG taxonomy, the UN SDG taxonomy, with the additional metadata that is provided in the structure of the Norwegian taxonomy. Thank you.
You can start, Cara, if you like.
Sure. Thank you, Lewis. Excellent question. I think that it is possible to apply the taxonomy to the global indicator framework. I would say, though, it could be a little bit difficult looking at it globally for global priorities, because you'd have national priorities that could be quite different from global priorities. And then between the national priorities, they could differ. So you could have country X, Y, and Z having these priorities, and A, B, and C having different priorities. So from that, with that respect, it could be a little bit difficult. The IAG could take it on and see if there were countries willing to apply the taxonomy and see what comes out. I think that could be an interesting exercise. However, we'd have to have countries volunteer to do that, because I think Geir and Jorn Christian noted that it is quite complex to do it, and it would take some time. So are there resources available to undertake that? I guess that's a question, but it's certainly something that the IAG members could discuss.
Thank you. And just some comments back to you, Lewis. No, the taxonomy is not yet made in a machine readable format, but that is on our list of to-dos. We have been talking together with the people in the Norwegian government agencies that run what is called data.norge.no. That is the common data platform for sharing data in Norway. They are utilizing a standard called XKOS that we have been discussing to use to do this. And then, of course, link to what you have done when it comes to the SDGs. And then also we will be able to link that to the ESS from the European system to link and make the interlinkages. To make it machine readable is then on our top list of priorities, of course. Then to make it in several other languages. We haven't discussed that as far as today, Anne. That depends on funding, I guess. You can answer that afterwards, but we are hoping to spread it as much as we can, because we see now that it actually it works. It works for people to use it, and it helps them prioritize. So I think that was two of your questions. You had one more, Luis?
No, that's it. Thank you. Excellent. And if we can support that process, the XCOS and SCOS are very much related. So it's really, really good to hear. Thank you.
Thank you both. I have a question from Daniel Ishiti from UNSD. Daniel, would you like to come in and ask a question?
Thank you, Jonathan. Actually, there was a response in the chat, but I think just to get this on the hook while we have the co-chair of IAG SDGs here, she already alluded to the collaborative effort. I think this is really key in terms of advancing this to in a more formal way of localizing SDGs. it is new in a sense, and there have been some activities from UNSD and others too. So we wanted to know if there is any plan by Statistics Norway and we're trying to get this, you know, in a long term, supporting other developing countries. As you know, UNSD is trying to push the work across developing nations. So there is a skills requirement, there is capacity development requirement. If there is a way we can, you know, formalize this in that regard, that would be an excellent opportunity. But I think the co-chair also alluded to that. So picking a few countries who can start looking into this to take it further. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Daniel. I'm not sure if anyone would like to react to that. If not, I have a follow-up question to the question raised if the taxonomy could be applied to the global indicator framework. And if I understand it right, then at least from the perspective of some municipalities in Norway, this has already been done for the global indicator framework and others. And only some of the aspects of the taxonomy would differ, right, in their classification. But dimensions such as how many output indicators do we have, and how many outcome indicators and other effect-oriented indicators, that should be applicable for all countries. And maybe that is already there's already some valuable information that we could make use of as the international statistical community. Would there be any reason, or could you also maybe explain a little bit better to me where the difference lies between these input, output, and the effect-oriented indicators, maybe with an example? I think maybe Geir can answer that.
I can start, but I think the expert here is Litchen. But before I give the floor to him, I would like to say that is maybe the classification that raises the greatest debates among people, because that depends a little bit on your point of view. Something that is one's output can be another's input. So those discussions are actually in themselves quite interesting. Is this input, output, process, outcome, or impact? We chose the logical model because it's known quite well worldwide. We wanted to use worldwide things where we could, and that of course raises, if one cannot agree that this is a typical output indicator, oh no, this is something else, the discussions in themselves raise the awareness of what it can be used for. So if one cannot stand and say that the whole world does agree on this specific classification, the debate around it will be enough. So we have not been occupied with 100% correct classifications. If you can get me right, we want it to be correct, of course, but if we cannot be perfectly correct, that is better than having nothing. So we have classified the UN SDGs in our project. That could be a starting point if you should do some work in the EIG. If you would like our results, they are openly available, so anything can be handed over. That's not a problem. And they are also classified in English, so that is available. It's only the Norwegian indicators that are not. So, but when it comes to discussing this exact class, maybe Yuli Chan would say something about the process you had.
Okay, thank you. So let me just add on it. So in terms of, let's take this first, this outcome or output, outcome, impact. This is like the framework of evaluation, logical framework evaluation. So let's take an example. COVID vaccination. That's an intervention. You would like to evaluate if sort of what is this vaccination is doing. The output would be, for example, could be the immediate sort of the results, if you want. So I vaccinated so many people. I did so many sort of visits and so on and so forth. That would go to the output part. The outcome is related to the subject or that you actually administer the intervention. So you would say for these people, how many of them actually was affected again or without being affected, or are their life? So what is the effect on these people you actually administer this intervention is about? So it's not about just how many shots you administered, but actually the people received these shots actually didn't get sick afterwards or got less sick and so on and so forth. All these measures on that belong to the outcome part, whereas the impact is really the global thing. So for example, if you want to talk about the mortality rate, that would belong to the impact part, right? And you could get this really complicated to say how the interplay between the COVID vaccination and other disease related, because you take up the resource or you take up the, so this could be really difficult, but that just illustrates what we say. What I want to say is that do not be a slave of the indicators. Nobody is working with this indicator for these indicators' sake. Don't lose the picture. Why do you engage in this? So it is actually these things, even if you say, like I said, you can keep discussing and wondering, is that the right indicator? Should we be talking about another indicator? Or what is the thing that I'm really interested in? This interplay between these three dimensions, the goal, the perspective, and the quality. So it's the interplay between this that helps you to move, to work towards the sustainable goal targets. It's not the indicator per se that is, I'm really classified and job done. No, that is actually the job itself. And this taxonomy is what our hope is, that this taxonomy is there both to remind you this and help you to do that, because that's really the how would you say, the value of these indicators, if you want.
Okay, thank you, Li Chan. That was very helpful, and thank you, Gare, as well. Are there any other questions from the chat? Any raised hands? Currently do not see any. I would also like to invite all the presenters, of course, to ask questions as well, if they would like. I still have a question that I'm quite curious about, but I would like to take a step back for now. But if I don't have to, I gladly ask my own question. So, as Kara has already said, the taxonomy seems to be much more widely applicable than just to the SDGs. And I think one example that I would believe could be quite important is climate change adaptation, because to me that is one topic of interest where the municipalities, local governments are really absolutely critical. And I wanted to ask if you are aware of, or if you think it's a good idea that this taxonomy would also be abridged to basically be able to also classify indicators, for example, from the I'm not sure if I have the name right, but the global set of climate change related indicators. I would leave it up to you who is best suited to respond. So I'm thinking of maybe Li Chan again.
I'm not completely sure the type of indicators you mentioned, but it's like the indicators about the climate change. Is you saying something like that, right? So it's the so I think yes, in a way it is possible, but I think the how would you say how do you? So I don't think there's so difficult with in terms of the goals. You can always connect it to Or you can say, I have a different set of goals. Instead of triple bottom line, I would replace with this, which is more sort of, instead of just one bottom line, I could define this bottom line more refined. So I use that one instead of the triple bottom line where two other lines are not related or whatever. And the quality, obviously, it's always there. So the question is more becoming would you find a readily perspective into this, or do you need to inject something, right? I think distribution, for example, it will be very natural to this. Just monitoring the change over time, monitoring the change spatial and so on and so forth, right? This distribution is naturally there. Just from the perspective of monitoring the climate change itself, the distribution will come in. It's like the same indicators produced in multiple instances. That's what it is. So therefore, that one way or another, it will come in. Whether you want to say this kind of evaluation type of perspective would be relevant in this context, I don't know. Maybe depending on sort of, do you have a very sort of intervention, sort of try to affect the climate change in some ways, then it would be relevant. Otherwise, if you just talk about the nature itself, you probably don't want to talk about human intervention per se and so on and so forth. So certain perspective may not be as relevant, but I'm sure that is, you will always find something at least. And like I said, the basic dimension and the interplay them, that's a key. But certain elements, as the user needs evolves, you can always sort of change that and adapt that, basically. I think that, so for the climate change, you might bring some other perspectives we haven't mentioned here that is maybe turn out to be more relevant. Just if we study this problem more closely, the indicators you talk about, maybe it will turn out something like that. But certainly already some perspective, I think, is already relevant to this environmental change indicators, I think.
Thank you. I have a raised hand from Lewis. Please come in.
Thank you, Jonathan. And sorry, I had to put off my camera, as I will need to move to another event right now. But I wanted to jump into this question. I think that the taxonomy that was presented by our colleagues from Statistics Norway provides a very good framework that we could look in two aspects. One is as the taxonomy itself, but also the ontology underlying this, which is the set of higher level concepts and categories. So if you look at this in this way, by replacing the goal aspect, but keeping the quality and the why is this important aspect of it, you could use the same overarching structure with different content related, say, to the Sendai framework of indicators. So the same framework can be repurposed, and then you get really powerful interconnections between different domains. So the potential is really great to work in this domain. Thanks.
Thanks, Louis. And you also had your hand up, but you took it down again.
I can comment very briefly. I think it's a good question, Jonathan, and we see that locally it's very relevant, and we are trying now to use the taxonomy to see what kind of indicators do we already have on climate adoption, what do we have on circular economy, and what are the quality, and what are the interplay, and how can we actually use them, and maybe, like Guy showed, how can we discard some of them? Because there's a magnitude of indicators, and the municipalities are really eager to reduce the number of indicators and find a really, really good one that helps them. Like Kara said, this is actually about politics and policy and creating the change. And we don't need thousands of indicators to do that. We need a really good set of quality indicators that we can use locally, regionally, nationally, and internationally.
Okay, thank you, Anne. I don't have any more questions, and we are almost at 4:30. So that, I believe, means we can give a round of applause for everyone who can use their mic already, to our speakers. And thanks so much, everyone, for your great presentations. Thanks, everyone, for your questions. And I'm very glad we could organize this webinar.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.